Hey everybody, Christy here. I am getting ready to start a project that I've had in my stash for a couple of years now. It's this Candy Cane Lane bench pillow from Kimberbell. This is a machine embroidery project. I bought the kit and the embellishment um, add-on kit a couple years ago. I just haven't gotten to it, but now I think I am ready to tackle this guy. So I wanted to show a little bit of my process of getting set up. Now, I am going to use my Janome 400E embroidery machine to do this project. My machine has an embroidery field of just about 8 inches by 8 inches. It says I think it's 200 by 200. I don't know if that's centimeter, I guess it's millimeters, but it's like 7.9 inches square. Which is a great size. And when I bought this kit, I realized that the blocks, all of the cute little blocks there, say they fit in a 5x7 hoop. 5x7 is smaller than 8x8, so we're good to go there. However, I didn't really think that hard about the fact that the blocks actually finish at 8 inches tall, and I wanted to use the cute Kimberbell background quilting on them. So I don't know if I can zoom in enough on there. This is the picture from their pattern, so you can kind of see what it looks like in their finished sample. They have used these cute background quilting designs behind the embroidery and the embellishment. And I've done this technique before. I made their candy corn quilt shop wall hanging a couple years ago. It turned out so cute. So I'm definitely going to do this again. I'm going to use some of the lessons I learned on that project here. Um, anyway, the reason why, using the background quilting is, cause for a video is that since these blocks finish at 8 inches tall, that actually means that they are 8.5 inches of cut fabric before they're sewn together. And my embroidery hoop is only a little less than 8 inches, but I can make this work. So first of all, I'm going to show you my process for how I set up the files and get everything ready. It won't be perfect, exactly the same process that Kimberbell will show you how to do, but I highly recommend, if you're going to use their products, that you take a look at their videos. They have some wonderful ones for both their different projects and also how to use their background quilting designs. So definitely check those out. I'm going to modify this a little bit and do some customization in my embroidery software just to make this fit in my hoop. I'm going to do the smallest amount of change possible because I want this to turn out pretty much like it shows in the picture. So anyway, let's get started. So for embroidery software, I use Wilcom Hatch. I have, I think it's actually the version 2. I think there is a newer version out there. You follow along with these steps in other software brands and other versions also, depending on your software capabilities. I could tell you how to use most of the other ones. This is the one I've been using the last couple of years. If you've got some kind of editing and a little bit of digitizing capability in your software, then you should be able to do this. So first, let me show you how their embroidery files are set up. I should not be giving away any special secrets or anything because you need to buy one of the Kimberbell kits to get their files. It would take quite a lot of work to digitize this all from scratch. So on the screen is one of the blocks from the bench pillow. This is the Christmas tree block. Actually, we're gonna, instead of starting with the Christmas tree block, we're gonna start with the background, which is the first part we stitch. So let's take a look instead at the background quilting. So hopefully all the colors show up okay. The quilting is this kind of light yellow, and see, this is one of their designs, KDQ022. It's this adorable kind of swirling design with candy canes and peppermints. So it is super cute. I think this is going to look great on the background of all of these blocks. But let's take a look at what I have. Let's see, where's the sequence? So we're looking at Hatch. I have just opened the design the way it is. And on the right here, I opened up what they call the sequence. This shows me all of the different stitch sequences that the machine is going to sew. It includes the different color changes. So this is the way the file would currently look if I just put it on a thumb drive and stuck it in my machine. So let's take a look. The first thing I will show is that the very first part of the design, it's this one little stitch, and it's one stitch in the middle. This is where I have to say this is my one pet peeve with all of the Kimberbell designs. I'm sure they have a reason for why you have this one little stitch in the center of every file, but I'm not sure what it is. And I think at least once I had the experience where I was stitching a design on top of vinyl and it pokes a hole in the middle of your vinyl in a weird place. So one of the first things I always do is get rid of that stitch, but we'll do that in a minute. Let me show you the rest of the pieces. Now this is their block by block method. Kimberbell has two different methods. They'll teach you two different methods for doing the background quilting. One is called block by block. The other one is called clear blue tiles. The block by block is meant for when you're stitching out one quilt block at a time, and then you're gonna stitch together the finished quilt blocks afterwards. Clear blue tiles is more like quilting on a finished quilt. So this is the block by block version. I think they give you both versions of the files. I could probably have, for what I'm about to do, you could probably start with either one, but I'm going to start with the block by block. If the file had fit in my embroidery machine, then this is exactly what I would use. So what they typically do is the first stitch is it stitches a placement line, which is this rectangle that was highlighted. You'll stitch a placement line on your stabilizer for your batting. You'll place your batting and it will stitch again in the same place and tack down the batting so that the batting doesn't move, and then you can actually trim it off close to those tack down stitches so that you won't end up with any batting in your seam allowance when you sew the blocks together. Then after that they will stitch a wider rectangle. This is your fabric placement line. That'll tell you where to put your top fabric that you're going to quilt onto. You lay that down, so tape it in place, and then we'll stitch a tack down line. And that tack down line is also your cutting line for when you're done. You'll actually cut on that line, and that will give you the perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance for joining your blocks. And then after that it gets into sewing all of the cute parts of the embroidery. So let's look at these. So first of all, see if you can see on my toolbar up here, you can tell I've clicked on the batting placement line, and it tells me the width is 6 inches and the height is 8 inches. Well, that right there tells me that this is not going to fit for the batting placement line. Now, I've got a couple of options. I could simply resize this file just a smidge shorter than that 8 inches to make it fit, to at least make the main part of the design fit into my hoop. Or I could get rid of the top and the bottom tack down lines for the batting. There's kind of pros and cons to both. If you get rid of just the top and the bottom, then I'll have to carefully trim the batting away from that top and bottom seam allowance when I stitch my blocks together. I'll have to do that myself. I won't have a nice line to guide me when I do that. It's not the end of the world. The other option would just be to make the entire thing a little bit shorter, and I can do that right here using, I could click and drag, but that's not very precise. I could actually just type the numbers into my toolbar up here and tell it exactly how tall I want it to be, and I would set it just under 7.9 inches, which would be, almost 8 inches tall, so it would fit nicely in the hoop. I could do that. That would take about 1/10 of an inch off of my finished size and might actually make the blocks fit together in the pattern a little bit off. It's not a lot, 1/10 of an inch is just a little bit. So you could choose either option. I will show you in a minute what I'm going to do instead. But before we get there, let's look at those fabric tack down lines. So that fabric line, it's this outer line that shows up in kind of this red purple color. Hopefully you can see the one that I highlighted here. It is actually 6.5 inches wide, 8.5 inches tall, and that's almost half an inch too tall for my hoop. There's no way, I can't shrink it enough for it to fit without just severely changing the size of the design. So what I'm going to end up doing is I am going to end up not using like the top and the bottom for the fabric tack down line. It's not a big deal. It is helpful when you go to trim, but you can also simply use quilting rulers, or I actually have the Kimberbell orange pop rulers, and they'll tell you in the pattern how to trim the blocks using their rulers to get just the right size. So I'm gonna use that method anyway. So let's go about editing this design in order to fit my hoop. So first I'm going to save a copy. I do not want to change my original one. I could download it off their CD again, but I still would prefer to have a separate copy that I'm playing around with. So I'm going to save design as, and my Candy Cane Lane folder that I've made for my working projects, I'm going to, actually I've got this folder called Prepped. This is just where I'm putting all of my files that are ready to transfer to the embroidery machine. So I am going to give it a name that means something more to me. I'm going to call it 6-inch background. I'm going to call it that because there are actually two sizes of blocks. One is 6 inches, the other one is 4 inches wide, and the prep for both will be the same. They both fit width-wise in my hoop, but not height-wise. So I'll show you what I'm doing with the 6-inch width. So let's save. All right, so now fresh clean copy. I will not mess up my original files. As I mentioned before, the very first thing I'm going to do, just because it's my own personal preference, I'm going to delete that very first stitch. So I just clicked on it in my thread sequence and hit delete. Okay, that guy's gone. The second thing I'm going to do is all of the yellow stitching I want to stick together, and I don't want those to I don't want to accidentally bump or nudge them out of place. I want them to stay put. So I'm going to click on all of them and say first group. That will make them one group. Second, I think I'm going to lock them, and that should keep me from accidentally moving them. Alright, so now let's click on those guys. Actually, since they're locked, it won't let me click on them to show you where they are, but you can tell that they're centered in the hoop. So the next thing I'm going to do is there's two ways that I know of to fix the height of the batting and the fabric tack down lines. One of them would be to go through and use my edit capabilities and use the knife and trim off the tops, then just leave the left and the right lines. If your version of your editing software doesn't have any digitizing tools that let you add new lines, but you do have the ability to kind of cut and delete parts, you might want to go with that. I am not going to do that. What I'm going to do instead is I'm actually just going to delete and redraw them. So I know I'm going to want two lines, no top and no bottom, so not a rectangle, but two parallel lines that are 6 inches wide and kind of centered in the hoops for the batting, and then two more that are a 1/4 inch outside of those. So I know what I'm going for. We're going to delete all 4 of these stitches. Alright, so if you're following along, I also could have started with the clear blue tiles file, which pretty much looks like this. But, I wanted to show you what the block by block looks like when you start. So, alright, next thing I want to do is I want to digitize those batting placement and tack down lines. So it'll be 2 horizontal lines. So I'm going to go to digitize open shape. This will let me make straight lines or optionally curves, and it doesn't have to be a closed shape like a circle. I can just have a line and not close it up. I'm going to get it close and then I will fix it. So first I'm going to click around the top. And now if you actually, so as I move around, I'm just moving my mouse. I'm not clicking anything right now. You can see the line where it's trying to go. It would be really hard for me to eyeball a perfectly straight vertical line like this. But in Hatch, if you hold down the control key, then see how it's kind of jumping angles? It'll actually jump to, I think it might be 15-degree angles, 15, 30, 45, and so on. That makes it really easy to get a completely vertical 90-degree angle. So I'm going to make this, sorry, I'm trying to zoom out a little bit, holding down control, pulling it down to where it's about the right height, and again, and now I'm done. So I let go of the mouse and hit enter. And now I have a line. Now that line is probably in the wrong place, and it's probably not exactly the right size, but I can fix both of those. Sorry, I'm zooming. I'm bad with my. I get a bad habit with my middle scroll button on my mouse. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy there. So, all right. So I have this vertical line. Now the placement of it, the way I want to move it exactly to the right place, left and right, and make it exactly the height that I'm looking for. So for height, no width, height, I want to make it 7.89 inches. That should just fit inside my hoop. Okay, done. Now for placement, the way Hatch counts the XY, your position X is counted in, I'm set at inches. You might have yourself set in millimeters, but I'm in inches from the center point of the hoop. And so from the center point, I want this to actually be 3 inches to the left. A 6-inch wide block. So I want the two lines at 6 inches apart, centered, so 6 divided by 2 is 3. So because I'm going left, it's a negative number, so -3. Hit enter. Okay. First tack down line is exactly where it needs to be now. Now let's take that line, click on it, I'm going to right click and say duplicate. And now you can't tell, but there's two of them, one on top of the other. Let's move apart. So we're going to click on the second one that I just created, and I want it to be exactly centered top to bottom of my hoop again. So position Y is 0, so that's the distance up or down from the middle. So the middle of the line I want at 0, and the position X, left and right, I want it 3 inches to the right, so +3. And I did not change the height. Alrighty, so there, now I have 2 lines. Alright, so that is those two together become my new batting placement line. So let's group those together because I want them to stick. And let's change the color. And I don't have to do this now, but I'm going to move them up to the beginning. I'm just going to, in my object list, I'm just dragging them up to the top. Alright, so now that I have 2 lines, I need to repeat it because the first step is you stitch a placement line on your stabilizer. The second step is that you put down your batting and you stitch the batting tack down lines. So I just need a duplicate of this. So I'm going to right click over here in my object list and say duplicate. And it made new ones, but it made them at the bottom. Let's move them up. Actually, I just move them all the way to the top. And we'll change the color. So what this will do, it will have me first color, it will stitch the first color, it will pause for me to change color. The second one, it's a different color of red. I can make it something darker so you can really tell the difference between steps. Make it green. Then we'll do the placement. So the second step we'll do the tack down. Alright, clear as mud. We're going to do it again because our next step now is to, after you tack down the batting, we want a fabric placement line and a fabric tack down line. So same exact process. In fact, let's just duplicate that guy again. Only this time we're going to ungroup them. Actually, we're going to change the color. Fabric placement is going to be blue. I'm going to ungroup them because I'm going to edit each side individually. The left side, 7.89 inches. Top to bottom, I don't want it centered in the hoop, but I want it negative 3.5 inches. Oh, nope, 3.25. I gotta do my math. 6.5 inches wide for the unfinished block. Divided by 2 is 3.25, not 3.5, so negative 3.25. And now, same thing on the right hand side. It's at 3, we're going to make 3.25. Right, and those guys are done. So right click on them, I'm going to group them again. I'm going to duplicate for the fabric tack down stitch. Those fabric tack downs, I'm going to make that yet a different color. And I want those to all stitch out for after my batting, but before the quilting. So go down again, up, down again, down again. All right, let's take a look and see what I've got. So we have batting placement, batting tack down, fabric placement, fabric tack down, adorable quilting. So let's see what that looks like. I'm actually going to turn True View on, which in Hatch will make the stitching look a little bit more realistic. Zoomed in just a little bit. And I realize I've got the right machine selected, but I actually haven't selected my hoop. So let's change the hoop. I want the RE20B, 200 by 200 millimeters. All right, you can see now we're just at the limits of that hoop. And one last thing, let's go to the player. The player will show you how this stitches out in the hoop. So this is a great tool to use if your software allows it to get a good view of what's happening. So right now we stitched batting placement left, batting placement right. We'd stop and change colors. And now we're starting the batting tack down left. It's the green stitches. And it will stitch the right side. Looks like it's going up from the bottom. Saving me some thread. Pretty sweet. Next should be the fabric. And I'm going to make this stitch just a little faster. You can see the fabric tack down. This is a lot faster than my machine would stitch it out right now, but you can see what's going on here. And next it's going to switch to all of the quilting in the middle. Oh, I missed a step. I jumped ahead of myself. The black thread color was the fabric tack down. Okay, now it's doing the stitching. Alrighty, and then we'll make it go really fast just for the sake of the video. Watch us stitch out all of this crazy adorable design. This would be so cute on just an all-over design on a Christmas quilt in general. Alrighty, so when you're happy with that, the next step, save your work. Always save the work. And then we could export the design just like this. We could, but we won't. What we are actually going to do is when I go to stitch out the real blocks, I like to have just one file loaded in the machine for each block that's got the background quilting preloaded and then has all of the applique designs on top. So let's do that, shall we? We are going to start with a new design and pick my right hoop size. And I'm going to do, the first thing I want to do in my new design is I want to insert a design, which is this button up here. It's got the little arrow in the tulip. Insert design. I'm going to pull up my 6-inch background design that I just finished creating. I was working with the JEF file instead of a native Hatch file, so it's going to give me a warning that it's not a native Hatch file. Not a problem. I'm not going to be resizing it, so we're good. So okay, I accept that. So it looks just like it did a minute ago. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert that Christmas tree design right on top. These are the files that I have loaded from my embroidery CD. The same error about the Christmas tree. I'm good with that. We are okay. Alright, and let's take a look at this Christmas tree file. So actually there's a lot going on on the screen, so let's look at it just all by itself. The steps that it has, it looks like the first step is that one stitch that I'm going to end up removing. The second stitch is down here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see it highlighted, all the way at the bottom of the base of the tree. This is, if you read the instructions, this is a fabric placement line. So that they actually want that at a certain space, a certain place in the design. You're going to put your fabric on a certain spot. So I want to pay attention to that, but I don't actually want to stitch that out on top of my quilted design, so I'm going to end up skipping through that step. The next thing is a fabric tack down. We are also going to skip that. That is completely unnecessary since I already have the background quilting all set up. And then after that, you start stitching all of the Christmas tree and everything else. So let's go back to our new design. I've just inserted it. It's currently centered. I'm going to refer back to my instructions. I assume that Kimberbell won't be too upset with me if I show you scrolling through their instructions, because honestly, I couldn't do that without these, and I can't use these instructions without the rest of the kit. So I'm going to scroll down to where they tell us about how the fabric needs to be placed in the hoop, which I know was down here. So right, so this was, they want this fabric placement line an inch from the bottom fold of the fabric. See right here, this is the trick that they're using in order to make sure that the fabric is centered in the hoop. So keeping that in mind. Alright, so let's keep going. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties for a moment and had to pause. So after reading the instructions, it looks like I actually want the bottom of my design to be lined up an inch above the bottom of the fabric placement. Okay, sorry, I had to pause for a minute. Starting right again. So we are looking at the Christmas tree block on top of the background quilting. So I'm going to want to remove a couple of the steps that are in here, including the very, oops. So actually we're going to, I think we need to ungroup everything first. So a couple of these steps we do not want to do on top of our background quilting. I did double check the instructions. There's placement lines that are supposed to help you get your fabric lined up in the hoop, but since we're doing the background quilting, those should not be necessary. So first off is a stitch in the middle, which that one's not usable for what I'm doing, so we can get rid of that. The second one is this bottom placement line. The idea is that you line a certain piece of your fabric up there. We will not need that because the design is already centered in the hoop on the background quilting. So you will notice that the bottom of my tree is not like all the way at the bottom of the design. but that's on purpose because after you stitch all of this out, the embellishment kit has this strip of kind of glitter HTV that goes along the bottom that's about an inch tall. This line right here, these two gray lines, it's about an inch there. So it's a kind of a wavy line. It will cover up the bottom of the tree a little bit and make it look like it's buried in the snow. So the tree looks like it's in the correct place. So I can get rid of that placement line since I don't need it. And then the background fabric tack down line, again, don't need it. I've already tacked down my background quilting, and the file should be good to go. And why do I keep scrolling sideways? I'm sorry, I'm making you all dizzy. But again, like I did earlier, let's give it a play and see what it looks like when it's stitching. So that first stitch was a jump stitch. I'm going to turn the speed up pretty high because we're going to watch as it tacks down the batting. It will then gives a placement and a tack down for the background fabric. And then I'm going to turn the speed up as it does some background quilting. That's cute, so cute. How fast can this guy go? Whoa, watch it go. And then if only my machine could stitch that fast and then accurately, it will make me a beautiful Christmas tree. Alrighty, so my design is saved as design 3, file, save design as. I am in my Practice folder. This is my tree. In fact, let's make sure that it has the right name. Actually, yep, tree. We're going to call this my tree file. And it's saving as an EMB, which is Hatch's built-in file format. We also are going to want to export that design to a JEF file, which is the format that my machine needs. So we'll save that. And since it's saved, did not give me any errors about quilting or stitches outside the hoop. So we should be good to go. Next step from here will be to take this over, put this file onto a USB and take it to my machine and stitch it out. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned as I start stitching through the rest of this project.